So let's talk about practical project management. One of the major issues, the assumption gap. Now, most of us have probably seen the infograph, which describes what the salesperson heard, what engineering built it for, what the customer was billed for, and what the customer actually wanted. And it really demonstrated the different views of projects and what the problem is with people trying to gather requirements and trying to explain to people what is really needed. Similarly, you have that problem with just assumptions. Now, assumptions are a major problem in project management because people have different expectations in the details. No matter what is said, no matter what is discussed, there is these unspoken assumptions that are made by people. It's natural. These assumptions can be held even by hidden stakeholders, and hidden stakeholders is a different problem where you've got people inside an organization who you don't necessarily know about, but they are stakeholders in the project that you're working on. And the real problem is at the end, unspoken and unmet assumptions can cause frustration because they're assuming, the project owners are assuming these are going to get delivered, or some stakeholder assumes they're going to get delivered, and they're not. And so now they're upset because the product doesn't do what they expected it to do. So why is it a big deal? As I said, unknown expectations not met can be just as devastating as missed success criteria from my other video. Got to be careful here because the assumptions can be just as powerful as anything that's written down. And understand at the end of the day, if you've got a multi-million-dollar project and the CEO is unhappy because an assumption that he made or she made is not met, that's just as bad as anything that you have in writing. If you could try to tell the CEO, well, it's not here in writing, therefore you didn't need it. That's great. It's not going to fly. Okay, so assumptions are critical. The big problem with assumptions is most of the time they're not voiced. Why would I voice something that is plainly obvious to me? If I'm going to want a system that's going to do X, Y, and Z, and from my experience, X, Y, and Z requires that the country code is entered in at every level. And you don't put the country code in every level because it's not listed as one of the requirements. Well, it's not voiced because it's an assumption. So you got to be very careful. And like a virus, these assumptions can spread as people talk. It may be that a hidden stakeholder will talk to your CEO and tell you how this new project that's working on is going to save his bacon because it's going to do X, Y, and Z, and that's going to be really, really great. And so the CEO gets excited saying, oh, I'm going to solve this other business problem by this project that's going on here. This is going to save our quarter. This is going to save our year. And this grows. And so these assumptions are a big deal, which you have to be able to understand. Now, one of the keys is when you look at how you can address this is you have to really get in hold of all your stakeholders. So you not only need the stakeholders that are defined for you, you've got to look for all the potential stakeholders. In the example I just said of a president of a business unit who thinks that this project is going to solve his solution, you need to get to that person. You need to get to all these stakeholders. This is the biggest problem, even with an agile approach, where the product owner may not know all the stakeholders in a multi-divisional global organization. But you've got to find the way to try to get as many as possible so that you can communicate with them and talk to them and document as much as you can. What you don't want to have is those assumptions from unknown stakeholders because they're the hardest to figure out. And understand, no matter how good you do it with the stakeholders, no matter how well you try to define them in the beginning, you're going to miss some. That's okay. You've just got to find a method so that when they're missed, there's a mechanism to get them onboarded easy and they can be communicated with easily. And you want everyone to know it because you want everybody, including all the other known stakeholders, to be able to help you identify them and identify any missed assumptions and bring it to the table. In addition to all this, All the stakeholders need to be communicated outside of the formal status meeting. One of the challenges that I see in a lot of project management is a lot of project managers try to keep the communication all within those formal status meetings, mainly so that they can make sure that everyone's on the same page. That's great. But the problem is that these stakeholders have things in their head that they may not have mentioned, and they're not going to mention it into a big room of people. You may need to talk to them individually and get those probing questions done. This isn't necessarily the job of the project manager. This can be the business analyst should have a role in this, architect should have a role in this, but you need to have those meetings outside of those formal status meetings just to talk to them, see what's going on, see what their assumptions are, what are they worried about. So you can try to capture these unspoken assumptions as early as possible. You just want to capture them, know them, and deal with them early on, because if these assumptions continue on to the end of the project, you're either going to have a project that isn't going to meet in their expectations of what you're delivering, or it's going to cause you to delay. In fact, I think that this is one of the main reasons why a lot of projects delay, because of these assumptions that are just not met, not discovered until we get to the testing phase. So what do you think? How do you guys address that issue?